All right, what's up guys? Part 3 of the series here. We're gonna start welding up this bumper. Now, I'm big on prep. You wanna prep all your joints before you weld them. For now, we're just doing tacking. We're not gonna prep, but you're gonna see throughout this video, you want all your joints to be very well prepped to get good, pretty welds. So, I have mine mocked up to weld. Basically, like I said, I want this nice open corner joint so the weld will fill all that. So what I do is I use these little shims, they're just cut-offs, to let this outside lip sit on, and then just use these magnets on the inside. Now, if you're at home and you don't have a big one-piece one like this, you're gonna start with the one that makes the most sense. To me, that's the center. So I would start with this, weld this on. In my case, this is 90 degrees, so it's super easy to square up and get the angle right. You know, you would start with that, move around, but I got this top piece ready to go. I'm gonna start tacking. Put a tack about every 6 inches. Keep an eye as you go, make sure the joint stays tight because metal expands and metal shrinks, so you wanna make sure you're staying where you want it to stay. Didn't manage to burn the GoPro lens that time. Sweet. So as you can see, we got a fair amount of tacks on here. This end is gonna have to get hammered in a little bit, so we're gonna worry about that in a second, but for now, and this one has to get bent out because we overbent it. But you want, like I said, a good bit of tack, so when you weld that face piece and you put all the heat into it, you don't get that joint just popping apart or shrinking up, and that you're gonna have a wavy front end. You don't want that. You don't want that, you know what I'm saying? Waves in the hair, cool. Waves in the front end, psh, not tight, bro. So, I know I said I was running a little bit cold because it didn't matter. Because I didn't grind the mill scale on the back, and it was just punching through the mill scale too, I didn't get as much penetration as I wanted. And when I had to hammer those ends, it just wasn't enough and they cracked. So I turned it up, went back over those few on the ends. I mean, as you can see, these have enough penetration to hold, but these are a good bit hotter. So if we look here though, that's what you want. You want that perfect little thing to fill your weld in the whole way around, at least in my opinion. And even if we grind this, we'll get a nice rounded edge because the weld is filling it, not sitting on top. This side got a little bit tight, that's fine. We can adjust that later. But otherwise, we have a really nice open corner joint the whole way, baby. So I basically repeated the steps of the last one and welded this bottom on. These corners were kind of a bitch to shape. Like I said, if the brake had bent them exactly how they should have been bent, it looks like they would have been perfect. Not 100% sure because it didn't happen that way. Overall, I'm still happy about that. I love the way this thing looks. Like this, these radiuses are so cool looking compared to the hard edges, at least in my opinion. And I plan on grinding all these welds, so I think it's gonna look real sleek when it's done. Now, onto the winch. Next thing we have to do is cut this tray out. We also have to cut the mounts, but for now we're gonna focus on the tray. I'm liking where this winch is sitting, and if you wanted to, you could just bolt it on top. But I don't wanna go that route. Like I said, I wanna tub this thing down. So I'm measuring, I got about 2 inches here to the front edge. Now obviously I can't cut 2 inches back because if you look, this winch gets fatter up here. So I'm probably gonna cut 1.5 inches and leave that 1.5 inches in the front for just to be open. And then we have to figure out our width. So we're gonna do all that. I'm gonna cut this probably with the angle grinder. You guys saw me use the fancy metal saw. That thing's nice, but it hates plunge cuts and blades are not cheap. So a plunge cut could easily cost you 60 bucks. That's not something I can afford to do as much as I wish it was. So we're gonna probably hit this with the angle grinder, cut it out, and then start building the tub. So you guys saw that in a couple seconds. That took me 8 minutes. That was painful. I'm probably losing brain cells from like fumes or something, because that was hard. But here it is. This is our little tub we're gonna cut out. Not this back line, but the front line. And if you want to double check your work, this is kind of hard because I rounded these edges, but you got to use a little bit of guesstimation here. So we're gonna say about what, 4 3/4 over. Double check this one. About 4 3/4. So we should be good to go. I tried to leave as much meat as possible and make it as tight as possible. This, I really wanted to fit multiple winches, and I don't really know. I'm not an off-road guy, so I haven't touched 1001 winches. So I don't know if they're all kind of close or if there's big variances, but this one will fit a Harbor Freight guy, and everyone by me can probably only afford Harbor Freight guys, so rad. Alright guys, so we got this mocked up. If you saw there, I used the wood that you guys might have seen in the beginning and some angle iron and some C-clamps, and I set the height and accounted for the wood to drop this down 2 inches. And looking at this, I think we can actually go even further, because this is, you know, the fair lead is going to be like that. So really we can lower this even more, which I probably will. And as you can see, we got more than enough room to move this forward some. Close up this gap, maybe open this up, make some room for the wires to run right through here. And I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's looking good. I'm gonna keep playing with that, and then I'll show you guys when we lay this out. Alright, we got this laid out. I just measured this. Basically 8 inches this way, you know, leave us a little bit of room to play with there. And then I went 2 inches this way. That's plenty. I mean, you're well within the rollers there. Really, if this was, I'm not going to keep this bumper. I really wish I was, but if I was, I would use a synthetic winch rope and a synthetic fair lead because it looks so much cleaner. But this will be what we put on there for now. Big old chonky fair lead. So yeah, I'm gonna cut this out, get some holes marked, and then we're gonna play with the level some more. We got this cut out. A little bit tricky because the grinder obviously won't cut this without cutting the whole thing in half. So I just basically cut deep enough to get the Sawzall blade in there, run the Sawzall up, run the Sawzall down, all the way around. That's our hole. Before we go any further, I'm gonna cut these frame brackets and show you guys how I cut the frame brackets to match. This is actually gonna be pretty easy. This is kind of a compound angle. You gotta think, this is around where the bracket should be, but this comes in a little bit. But we're gonna get it super close. I'm gonna show you guys how. This is 2 3/4 of an inch from the top to the first angle. We know that that is square to our bumper. So what we're gonna do is take our square and measure down 2 3/4 of an inch and then mark it. So I'm at 8, you're gonna go to 6, 6 and 3/4. If I could see, I just can't see the damn thing. Really don't need to mark out there, I don't know why I did. Right there is all you need. That's where our mount's gonna curve in. Now, take a look back at our bumper. This is where your angle finder is gonna come in handy. Turn that bad boy on, zeroed up. Now, get this angle. And we're gonna say it's about 144. So this actually will hold the angle for you. All you're gonna do is take this, square it up on that front edge, and make that terminate right where our mark is at 2 3/4 of an inch. And boom, just like that, we have our angle. So this will match the inside of the bumper. Cut that, and then it should line right up. We'll double check. I'll get back with you guys once I cut it. If I fuck this up, I ruined a nice frame bracket that'll cost me an hour of work, but no big deal. So if we take a little peek in here, our fitment's pretty good. We do have to trim a little bit more off the bottom, because just like I said, that inside edge rolls in and it's just gonna catch. So we'll use a little bit of cardboard, a little bit of trimming to do that, but overall, I'm pretty happy with that. We'll trim that up a little bit more. Basically, do the same thing. You can use some cardboard or just mark it with a Sharpie, eyeball it, trim it, move it back. Eyeball it, trim it, move it back. You can do that. That's probably what I'm gonna do. And then once I'm done with that, we'll move on to the tub. All right, so all my pieces are cut for the box, and I'm starting to weld them up. I got this side tacked up. I'm gonna show you guys what I'm doing over here. I use these little fireball clamps. These hold them at 90 degrees. If you don't have these, just tack them up and use a square, tap until they're good. And then I put them flush with the edge, and then you'll put another clamp. But the problem is, this back edge has to go straight up to meet. So this actually is meant to basically drop in behind them so that this will fill the gap still, blah, blah, blah. I hope you guys get what I'm saying here. So basically what I'm doing is taking a scrap piece and using that as a shim to set how far back the piece goes. So you're just gonna, you know, basically make a 3/16 gap behind the piece until that's flush. Clamp it, tack it. Once I get all this tacked in, and then I'll show you guys how far I came. So here it is, guys. It's all tacked up. It's hanging in there. That's why there's a gap. It was kind of hard to get it to stay, so I have to grab the camera real quick. But you can see the fitment's actually perfect. These are all open corner joints. Before I put this in here, I'm gonna weld these verticals because they'll be a little bit easier to do, and then probably weld these once it's all together. I'll be able to get in there with the gun good enough to do that. So we'll wait for the final weld out for that part. But I'm gonna do that, then I'm gonna put this tray back in here, tack it up, and then we're gonna drill some holes. All right, here's the tub, guys, all tacked in. A little bit tricky. I ended up having to pull the bumper off, flip it over, lay it on top because I didn't have anyone here to hold it from the bottom. But I did weld these inside corners while it was off. I tried something new over here, just kind of like a drag and weight. Back here, I started to get her down. I mean, they look pretty good. These are a little too fast. The verticals are vertical down. Then, next thing we have to do is mount up the winch in here. If you look at these two little marks right here, those are the marks I made for the front of the feet. Now, if we look in our manual, believe it or not, pretty sweet in my opinion, they actually have the centers marked out. So you got 10-inch center across and 4.5 deep. So what I'm gonna do is measure back from here to the center of that bolt, and that is where the front of this is gonna be. So this is where I want the front to sit, that line I marked. I'll measure back this distance, and we'll mark all the holes out like that and lay it out. All right, so we got all the holes center punched. I'm gonna cut them out with the mag drill in a minute, but I'm gonna show you guys how I got here. So first thing I did was measure the inside of this plate. It was 23.5. Our mounting bolt center to center is 10, so we subtract them. Then we get 13.5. Divide that by 2, 6 3/4. Now you just measure 6 3/4 out, 6 3/4 out. Double check them. You'll get 10, and then measure that back to 4.5. Do the same thing. We'll punch these out, and then we'll be able to put all this in, mount the winch, and actually get an idea how it's going to look. Here it is, guys, basically in all its glory. As you can see, we have a bigger gap over here because the winch is offset, but you know, pretty good sized gap there. This is all bolted up. All the bolt holes do line up. I actually just took them out, but you can see. And next we just gotta center it up, tack the mounts, then weld it out. But that's it for this part of the video, guys. The bumper's done. Next episode, 100% finished. We're gonna do the full weld out, and then we're gonna finish this in bed liner. I'm gonna show you guys the way I do it, what I use, and you know, that's it. Hopefully you guys stay tuned. Next episode's coming soon. See you guys.